The attempt on my life has left me scarred and deformed. But I assure you, my resolve has never been stronger.
For a safe and secure society.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
A little bit of a dramatic intro there. That was When Liberty Dies, one of my favorite lines from Star Wars. That's Senator Padme there. We need a little Senator Padme in our modern society, don't we? Or do we need a little Palpatine? I don't know, depending on which side of the aisle you're coming from, right? Are the Republicans Siths? That's not what I'm implying here, no. This episode of the Citi-Zen-Ship show is brought to you by Ground News. Hello and welcome back to the Citi-Zen-Ship show. My name is Clinton. Today, we're going to be talking about democracies, dictatorships, the differences between the two, and which system will win out in 2025. This is officially the start of season 2, so I welcome you to a brand new year on the Citi-Zen-Ship show. We are here again at the Politico studio in downtown Parksville. We thank them very much for having us here. And without further ado, let's just jump right into this. The catalyst or inspiration for this episode is the discourse around Donald Trump. I am not going to be directly answering the question if Trump is a dictator. That's a question that many publications have asked, many reporters, many people have floated this question around. I'm not going to directly address it. I'm just going to be defining the terms and let you guys reach your own conclusions. My job here is not really to convince you of anything, but simply to arm you with the language necessary to understand the news better. So let's jump into my little chart here. I just kind of whipped this up this morning, and this is just a little table going through democracy and dictatorships and the differences and between them. There's not many similarities. These are kind of two competing systems. Let's begin by talking about the concept of sovereignty. The best definition of sovereignty I've heard is the monopoly of force in a given area. And essentially that just means, where does power actually rest? Who gets to make the decisions? In a democracy, sovereignty belongs to the people. We are for the people, by the people, as the American expression says. In a dictatorship, sovereignty is controlled by one person, usually the leader, a sovereign, or a king. Canadian democracy has been linked with this idea that we have a monarch. We didn't get rid of the king like the Americans do. We technically still today have a parliamentary constitutional monarch.
Since 1867, the Governor General has represented the Crown in Canada, carrying out the duties and responsibilities of the head of state, Her Majesty the Queen, and ensuring the country always has a leader and government in place.
So help me God.
The King of Canada, who is also the King of England, is our head of state. He is represented by the Governor General, but the Prime Minister is technically not the head of state of Canada. So in terms of democracy, Canada still has this really weird quasi kind of thing where the Prime Minister is essentially in control, but just because that's just the social norm of it. The actual Constitution still refers to the Crown, still refers to the Governor General. The Governor General has the right to, prorogue and dissolve and create governments and force elections. Like the Prime Minister cannot do any of this stuff alone. And it's a throwback to these ideas of kind of just the heritage of the monarch. The next big point is the rule of law. In a democracy, everybody is equal under the rule of law. You have one standard for everybody, as opposed to a dictatorship where you have a two-tiered system. The dictator is very keen on attacking their opposition by imprisoning their political opponents and essentially weaponizing the justice system. You've all heard these terms. This is essentially just saying that a dictator will use any method of government to carry out their will, right? And that it's not grounded in a everybody is equal under the law. That is a fundamental principle of democracy. So if you believe that everybody has a right to a fair trial, if you believe that everybody has a right to proper representation, these are things that are consistent with democratic norms. Dictators are more likely to attack their oppositions, to imprison their political enemies, to weaponize the justice system, to have these levers of government and use them not for the good of the people, but use them for the good of themselves. In democracy, we also have the one person, one vote. There is a political equality that is there, both in the political system and the justice system.
Like, I'll fucking go to jail, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm hard, right? I ain't shook about going to jail, but it's like, I kind of like my freedom, too, at the same time, you know what I mean?
Democracies are also really big into individual freedoms. Individual freedoms include the freedom of speech, the freedom of association. You get to be part of whatever political party you want. You get to choose the job you want. You get to choose the friends you want. And also freedom of mobility, that you're not confined to a certain location, that I can drive to Toronto tomorrow if I want to, because we live in a free and fair democracy. As opposed to this, a dictator really suppresses individual freedoms. They have some kind of secret police or secret militia that will ensure that citizens fall into line. Instead of actually allowing citizens to flourish and come into their own and self-actualize, a dictator is very much concerned with controlling citizens instead of allowing them to flourish independently. My next big point, and this is a cornerstone of democracies, free and fair elections. In a democracy, you will see multiple political parties. You will see the idea that competition and choice are a good thing. In dictatorships, you usually see one centralized political party and kind of fake or, elections that are not so much fair, that there is a predetermined outcome going into this election. A democracy like Canada, having multiple political parties, the Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP, the Bloc, the Greens, the People Party, the Rhino Party, in Canada, we allow multiple political parties, even though only two have ever been elected. We do have multiple political parties, and we understand that competition and choice is a good thing. Next, we got to talk about the good old media. So when we talk about media being free and independent, again, this is very similar to our conversation around political parties. In democracies, you have choice, right? It doesn't mean that all papers have to be independent. It doesn't mean that you can't have right-wing media. It's just that you have right-wing media, you have left-wing media, you have centered media, you have state-run media, you have independent media, you have corporate media. And this lends us actually really well into our segue today, because I have a really great news for you guys. We actually have our first channel sponsor. This episode of the Citi-Zen-Ship show is brought to you by Ground News.
The news is divided. Ground News puts it back together, with coverage from thousands of outlets around the world in one place. So you can spot sensational reporting, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. Beside every headline, you'll see who owns the source, how reliable it is, and if they have a political bias. Multiple perspectives side by side, giving you a well-rounded view of today's biggest stories. Visit ground.news to learn more.
So being aware of your media diet is really important, and I do encourage all you guys to check out the link in the description. Ground News, they're great, both an app and a website, and I've really enjoyed the last 2 weeks that I've been part of the platform. So getting back to our conversation, in a free and fair democracy, the media outlets, they should be multiple, they should be competing with each other, and the citizens should be able to have freedom of choice in which media they consume. I think a big problem with dictators, and one of the first plays that they usually do, is they outright attack the media. This kind of is linking into this idea of imprisoning your political enemies. If you can get rid of journalists, if you can suppress stories, if you can make it so that people are not aware of certain things and you can control the information that reaches them, that is a big win for dictators and authoritarian governments. So I think it's really important that as, North America, the free and fair press, and we're going to get into a couple news stories here in a little bit, it's very core to democracy that we actually have open, transparent information. Transparency and accountability is kind of our next part that we're getting into, is this idea that information should be accessible to the public. If there is a budget and the government is about to spend a large amount of money on something, the people have a right to know what that is. There needs to be transparency. The people need to be able to access the information. They also have to be able to critique and amend the information potentially too. This does not exist in dictatorships. Dictatorships are solely based around the point of unilateral control, centralized control. One person or a small group of individuals making decisions for communities without community consent. I want to talk about majority rule and minority rights. So this is actually something I learned from a lecture back in college when I was at the University of Victoria studying political science. And we actually had Justin Trudeau, who was campaigning for the Liberal leader. He came by to the campus to give a talk. And this is actually probably the best definition of minority rights I've ever heard. So I'm just going to echo it right now for those of you guys unaware of the term. If you were to imagine a classroom of students and there's a teacher there and the teacher says, we're going to have a new policy around homework. However, I want to make sure that this is democratic, so we're going to have a vote. All right-handed students are going to be exempt from homework. They're not going to have to do any homework anymore. And the left-handed students will have to do their homework as well as the homework of the right-handed students. So the students take a vote and like nobody is surprised, the right-handed students all vote for no homework and force the left-handers to have to do the work for them. This was democratic. They did a vote. The majority won. However, the question is this fair? So this is where we get into the idea of the tyranny of the majority, right? And is it actually fair to just allow the majority to decide things? This is why in democracies, yes, we have majority rule, but we also have minority rights. There is significant thought and attention put in to make sure that minority groups, whether they be left-handed people, language minorities, people of color, whatever the distinction is, right, that we actually have safeguards to protect those people from the rule or the tyranny of the majority. This does not exist in dictatorships. Dictatorships usually specifically speak to one group in society, and they are good at hyper-focused, kind of on one demographic, and then essentially blaming the problems of society on all the other demographics. This is very traditional. This is Hitler's kind of thing, right?
Until the last Jew in Munich has been exterminated. Other cities will follow suit precisely in this fashion, until all Germany has been completely cleansed of Jews. That was Adolf Hitler talking to the journalist and retired army officer Josef Hell in 1922. And Dominic Hell, that's a very appropriate name, isn't it?
It is.
So we've seen this where we don't really accept the diversity of people. And then lastly, the big thing, what separates democracies and dictatorships is this idea of respect for human dignity.
Started to cry, pushed my chair back. I made so many bad judgments. The worst ones, mistakes of the heart rather than the head, as I pointed out. But let me say, a man in that top job, he's got to have a heart.
Do you love thy fellow man? Are you actually doing this for the good of the people? And it's hard because we're actually going to get into this in a future topic here. But everybody has different opinions. Everybody has different morals. There isn't really a core moral guiding compass like we've had in past generations, right? Especially when societies were kind of run by religious institutions, where everybody kind of had the same moral understandings on these big philosophical questions. We don't live in that society anymore. But the one thing that we do have to respect, and democracies respect, is there is intrinsic value to human beings. And we are all on the same team, regardless of where you come from, or what language you speak, or what color your skin or your eyes, your hair are. We are all on team human race. We are human beings. Now, dictators, again, they don't respect this. They try and create divisions amongst society. They try and create wedges amongst society, and they put themselves above the actual people. So I can put some of this up on screen. I have been putting some of this up on screen. Hopefully it makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, just kind of go over the high level stuff again. It is kind of a little bit of a recap for you guys. We have sovereignty. We have rule of law. We have individual freedoms. We have free and fair elections. We have majority rule and minority rights. We have the media and the media's relationship. We have respect for human dignity. And you know what? I forgot one. This is why we wrote some stuff down. On the subject of unilateral control, I do just want to quickly mention the system of checks and balances and the whole idea of federalism and the idea that different parts of government will take on different responsibilities. So the military is a responsibility of the federal government. The healthcare systems are the jurisdiction of the state or provincial governments, and garbage is the jurisdiction of the city, right? So again, fighting against this notion where a dictator would be unilateral control, a democracy has a system of checks and balances and a federal system that will divvy power out through multiple people, multiple institutions, and multiple levels of government. So that is the high level definitions. I hope you guys learned a little bit about this. It's all really about understanding the news better. So let's kind of jump into a few of these sources here. I want to start off with an NPR article, NPR being the National Public Radio in the United States. This is called, during the campaign, Trump promised to be a dictator, but only for a day. I've heard this quote. I'm sure many of you guys have heard this quote. Again, we're not going to get too much into this American stuff. One quote I wanted to mention. So this is, the interviewer is talking to a Jason Stanley, and he's a philosopher and author at Yale and an expert in fascism, as the article cites. Stanley says, the strong man is someone who represents democracy as weak and inefficient, presenting himself as the only one who can fix the nation's problems. Democracy involves compromise. And so it can be represented as a sort of feminized system. The strong man offers, in a sense, efficiency. But it's a fake promise, right? Because efficiency is not the answer. Loyalty for the strongman always wins over competence and efficiency. So loyalty is going to be the prime element for any strongman's regime. I find that really interesting. So one, I'm going to have to do a whole episode about kind of alpha male energy and stuff like that. And maybe this is kind of a segue into that. But this whole idea that democracy being based on compromise is essentially feminine, and that, you know, to be a man and to be masculine means to be those alpha mans who are kind of have unilateral control. That's a very interesting concept to me. I think we really need to reassess our whole definitions of leadership. And that's a big point of kind of this podcast, is kind of just redefining our terms and re-understanding what things mean. So what do you guys think about that? I'll just leave that up to you. Again, this is a channel based on free thought. You know, is democracy essentially feminine, and, you know, dictatorships essentially masculine? And how do these understandings of the battle of the sexes inform how we're going to create governments moving forward? So I thought that was very interesting. And then I guess to his point that, yeah, the strong man is more concerned with loyalty than they are in efficiencies. You do hear this, and Trump has said this verbatim, as a bunch of other, you know, kind of right-leaning people, that I alone can fix this. And this does fly in the face of democratic values, in the sense that, you know, we're all in this together. We all have impressions about what success looks like, and we all need to be involved in decisions. You know, it shouldn't come down to one man's opinion, and that is just one man's opinion. What's the other article? So this is from Politico. Trump can't be a dictator. Not on day one or in his second term, and here's why. Many Democrats are terrified that a second term for Trump would turn into an American dictatorship. They aren't wrong to worry. For one, Trump has talked about the idea without completely dismissing it. And the U.S. is neither immune to populism, which is the predecessor for authoritarianism, nor unshaken by its institutional attachment to liberal democracy. Given enough time, America too could lose its checks and balances and slide into some type of electoral tyranny of the majority. Is that the future of America? We don't know. So in conclusion, I hope you can see that democratic norms and democratic ideals work best for citizens. If I had to boil it down to a very simple sentence, dictators are about one person having all the decisions, and a democracy is about actually sharing that power through the citizens. I almost use the word to democratize, and it actually has become a verb, because to democratize means to share power amongst the people. So again, this channel is all about helping citizens of the world step into their power, get informed, and be able to get you guys to understand the news better so you can engage in the political process more effectively. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation around dictators and democracy. I'm filming this video on Friday, but it's going to be posted on November 11th, which is Remembrance Day here in Canada. I need not tell you about the ultimate sacrifice that our men and women in uniform have made to not only fight in the First and Second World Wars against a legitimate fascist, but have continued to fight against our enemies abroad and at home. Democracy is one of these things that we have had to continue to fight for throughout the history of humanity and the history of North America. Freedom ain't free, as the expression goes, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope you had your moment of silence today. I hope that you will continue to stand up for democratic norms, democratic values, democratic ideals, because it's about all of us working together towards the common good, not some good that one person defines, but the public good for all of us. So let me leave you with this. This is a little poem that I've had in the back of my head for a long time now. No, it's not Flanders Field. And it goes a little something like this. Watch as the king gets taken by the pawn, because the power of the people has been here all along. My name is Clinton. Thank you for watching the Citi-Zen-Ship Show. Stay informed. Stay zen. It's going to be okay. I'll see you in the next video. If you like what you see, do subscribe. We come out with these videos every week. Do check out Ground News in the description, the show notes down there. It's a really great app and a website that's going to help you assess, what your echo chamber is and what your media bias is, and just kind of, again, thrust you into this world of being a free, independent thinker. So if you're into that, link is in the description below. Go check out Ground News.